Recording. Okay, so welcome to another episode of CF Get Loud Coffee Time. Our guests today are Beth and Madi Vanstone. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Took a shower for this one. I know Steph had mentioned that we needed to get a little bit more professional and stop showing up in our PJs. So as you can tell, we're evolving in our concept. Thank you for your understanding, CF Get Loud team. We got Matt and Steph with us today. I believe Michael couldn't come on. He's saving the world on his end and trying to feed children. So maybe a little background. I don't know if you guys, Beth and Madi, want to introduce yourselves. And for those that don't know you, I don't know where the hell you've been living, but please introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Famous.
Yeah.
Famous, 100%.
CF celebrities.
Do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Madi.
Go on, Mad. Oh, okay. I'm Madi Vanstone. I'm a CF patient, and I'm also an advocate. I've been advocating for a pretty long time. I'd say our family has been advocating since I was diagnosed, and I'm on Kalydeco, which is exciting.
Yay.
Okay. And I'm Beth, I'm Madi's mom. And so in advocating, so we advocated to get Kalydeco for Madi, which she's on, but we also advocated prior to that. So we were very loud in getting newborn screening as well, which was another important step in CF care and making sure that patients got access to that as well. So we've tried to be involved as much as we can since CF came into our world.
Okay, this is absolutely amazing because every time I speak to you guys, I learned something new.
Yeah.
I did not know about the newborn screening. So maybe let's start there. How was that? Maybe if you can take us back a little bit in the history of CF. I mean, ever since the gene was discovered here at Sick Kids in 1989?
I believe so.
Yeah. How did, I guess, the transition from finally discovering the gene to newborn screening, how did that go?
Well, the newborn screening, I don't know the whole history. I cannot tell a lie. I know that we did not have newborn screening here in Canada, and that it was a bit of a battle to have that done for patients, new babies. Mm-hmm. And I knew how important it was, and probably each of your parents knew too. I don't know. Madi wasn't diagnosed until she was 8 months. So I had 8 months of going back and forth to the doctor like I was an idiot. Like doctors were just shaking their heads thinking, what's wrong with you? She's fine. She's got a cold. So it was 8 months in getting her finally diagnosed. And I didn't want any parent or patient to have to go through 8 months when there was a test that could make sure that child was delivered the medication and care it needed right off the bat, and to help the parents get a head start on taking care of this baby, right? So
is Madi your youngest? Beth, can you just let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have an older daughter. She's going to be 22. She's just finished her psychology degree and starting teacher's college in September. Jess was born fine, perfect. And this is so funny because Jess, I was one of those parents that did not want my kid on antibiotics because back in she was born in 98. It was like, don't put your kids on antibiotics all the time, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was that parent. I was like, yeah, no, she's just got to ride it out. And then 3.5 years later, the antibiotic machine lives on them, right? It was just so ironic. But yes, he was born and literally probably after a month, I knew there was something going on, and I'm sure your parents all had this too. She lost a lot of weight. She was wheezy, had colds, so she had her first hospitalization actually at 8 months with her first pneumonia.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so then we were told to rule out CF. I don't know if you guys have it in your families or not. We didn't know of anybody else, right?
No,
yeah.
No, not at all.
It's quite common, right? You just don't, it's way out in the arm of your family. So we had no idea. And I'm like, you know what? She's doing good. I don't want to go that route, So we kind of resisted going down to Sick Kids to get the sweat test. then I think my mother-in-law found a case of one of Glenn's had passed away at like 32 of CF. So it was like, oh, you know what? We gotta do this. So we went down. She was diagnosed. She was literally in the hospital twice a year, every year from that time on until Kalydeco.
Wow. And Beth, what was the, like, so in that year, what was the sweat test like? Because when I was a baby, the sweat test, I don't think it was as pleasant as it is now.
No.
It was exactly the same as it is now. So they just put the thing on and wrapped you around. Yeah, it was nothing invasive. It was easy.
It used to be very invasive.
What
is your history with the sweat test, Steph? How was yours?
I think they had to do something with your, like they had to put something in your spine. It was very not pleasant. Yeah, my mom was very, I should feel like I should be like, and welcome Judy. I feel like I should bring in my mom. But I remember it wasn't as easy as it was today, but this is 1983. And there was no doubt that I had CF because I nearly killed my mom. Like I had the typical meconium blockage, and my stomach kind of exploded inside itself and inside my mom. So it was an emergency C-section for her. And I came out with quite a lot of drama. So surprising. And yeah, thankfully my mom was okay, but I was rushed off to sick kids. She was in a heavy recovery, blood transfusions, helping her stay alive. And so I got sent to sick kids. She stayed at Oshawa General. I had immediate exploratory surgery, which gave me a nice roadmap of a stomach. And because in 1983, I just feel like they were like, and that's where they realized like it was a typical type sign of CF, was this meconium, like the, your baby poop all just bundled up inside. And so I lost a bit of intestine, and from there on, it was just pretty obvious CF. Yeah.
So
but they hadn't discovered the gene yet in 1983, right? So it wasn't as simple.
So I mean, my story is a little different too. I mean, Beth, you mentioned going 8 months, or I forget the amount of time that you mentioned, without a diagnosis. My mom and I went all over Colombia looking for a diagnosis until I was 8 years old. So I didn't have any intestinal issues. I've always been smaller compared to my class of mates, I guess. But definitely just had the persistent cough. Luckily, not enough to require admission. But, it's just that very, very marked cough. So we just went from doctor to doctor, and it is a predominantly white disease. So in Latin America, it's, if they weren't thinking about it here, imagine what it was like in Colombia. Mm-hmm. So it was only until we arrived at one of, I guess, our first miracle doctor, because I'm sure we all have our miracle doctors throughout our CF careers, that decided to go ahead and do a sweat test when I was 8 years old. And I mean, I think it was so bittersweet, because I call it a victory, because it's finally, a conclusion to an uncertainty. But obviously the diagnosis was a bit bitter as well, given, I guess, the history of CF and life expectancy back then. Why don't we change gears a little bit then to a little bit more of your advocacy efforts as Madi got older, both Madi and Beth, and what prompted advocacy as an avenue to pour your energy into. I know CF mothers are absolutely amazing. Parents, I don't mean to say CF mothers, CF parents, and CF spouses as well. But what made you want to do more? What made you want to be the trailblazers that you have been?
I don't even know that at the time we were trying to be anything. Really, Madi had been on a blind test with Kalydeco. So she was like I said, she was a sick kid, right? Like I think she was like 3, her numbers were down in the 50s for quite a while, and we fought with that and got her up. And then she was, like I said, she was sick all the time. And literally when she was home, she was sick all the time. She wasn't out playing. She wasn't having a good time. And he happened to have the G551D, which was the gene for Kalydeco. So sick kids were like, okay, great. Do you guys want to do this trial? So
how old were you, Madi, when you started this trial?
I think I was 11.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
And immediate, I'm guessing you were on the actual drug, not the placebo.
I was going back and forth.
Okay.
But I could tell right away when I was on the actual pill, like right away. Like it was a huge difference.
Were you able to feel it right away the way people, talk about Trikafta, like within hours, or was it days, or what was the feeling?
Probably within days. Like just like my energy would come back, and like, you just feel better. Like I wanted to go out. I wanted to hang out with friends. Whereas before I would just want to lay around all day and just like sleep. So yeah, it was a huge difference for me.
Okay. So how long did the study last?
So the study was 30 days. So they did a 30-day placebo. So you didn't know you were on one drug for 30 days. They did a 30-day washout, and then they put you on the other, right? We knew right away because her appetite went through the roof. And I remember, Matt, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember her laying beside me. We were probably doing therapy, and then she stopped and she said, "Mommy, I can breathe through my nose," because she had tons of sinus issues.
I remember that. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, she was. Yeah, it was so. And
How
it was.
does that make you feel, Beth? Because like as a mom, like I literally am like.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, like if my son looked at me and he said like, "Oh, I can breathe again," like I just.
Because you don't see it was like I didn't know she couldn't breathe through. Like I knew she had all the sinus issues. I knew she had headaches all the time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't in there, so I didn't know that she couldn't breathe. I mean, through her nose, right? I didn't.
Yeah.
So the first time expressing it, I was actually really. I went happy as opposed to like, oh, my poor kid couldn't before because.
No, 100%. I am. Yeah.
It's just like this is so awesome, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So this trial lasted. You said you were going back and forth 30 days, 30 washout, 30 back. For years, or was it?
No. So it was literally 1 month of placebo, a month washout, and 1 month of Kalydeco.
That's it.
Done, and we don't have the drug, right?
Oh wow! Did you see a big decline when you got off the drug, or did you just go back to baseline? But now having tasted,
she dropped back some. She had gone when she went on Kalydeco. She went from 78, 79 to 115% of her,
Wow.
Right?
That's incredible.
And it was like a small portion. Like the big portion to me was that she wasn't laying on the couch and she had a lot of intestinal too. Like she always had like, you can tell about your belly, but she, so the biggest part was having her back, like having fun and stuff. And then the drug was gone. We weren't, so.
I think it's a very interesting takeaway because, I mean, to us CFers and our teams, our families, like the biggest number is lung function. It's I think the most important number in our lives. And oftentimes, you think that even having 79, you think you're pretty healthy, but there's such a marked difference when you gain just a 20%, even, most markedly so between a 40 and a 60. But that's not to say that from an 80 to 100, it doesn't change your life completely, which I think is a big takeaway because, when we look at the bigger picture of Trikafta and compassionate care and we think, okay, well, it's been given to those that are sickest and all of this and maybe those that are in the 80s or in the 90s or the 70s, they deserve that same grapevine, that same feeling of being able to breathe again, of having the energy to go out.
Like you guys know, it doesn't just affect your lungs. Like she had sinus headaches every single day. She had belly aches every single day. She had no energy. You know what I mean?
The energy for what I see is just like, is so important because
Yes.
I feel like you start doubting yourself as a person. You're like, oh, am I just a lazy kid that wants to snuggle on the couch, or do I not want to play with friends? Like, you start to wonder, what are the what are the psychological ramifications of not having energy? Because there are so many times I said to my husband and even to the CF team, I said, excuse the language, but I just said, maybe I'm just a lazy asshole. Like, I'm like, why aren't I doing anything? Why can I not get off the couch? And even my doctor said, like, Stephanie, I can assure you that is not the case. Like, we know you. And in the minutes I was able to have a reprieve, my energy levels and just the things I can do with my less mental fog, even if it's not like energy when it comes to muscles or appetite, it's the brain fog is lifted. And creatively I can do things again that I haven't done in years. So it's really, it impacts who you identify as a person based purely on energy levels. It's so refreshing to hear that stuff, because I've always struggled with that, and even my wife jokes that I'm just the laziest person on earth. And sometimes she's like, "Oh, let's go for a walk," like with neighbors and stuff. It's like, let's walk down to like the bar like 5 blocks away. I'm like, let's drive, like, or like, let's go for dinner, and like we could walk, and it's a beautiful day. I'm like, and I don't know if I'm just a comfortable. You need to be kind to yourself. Person. No, you need to be kind. I know, but it's nice to actually hear other people like having felt the same way. And maybe it is a confirmation that I'm not just the laziest person on earth. But the brain fog, I think, is a good point. That it's a lot more difficult to quantify, right? Because one thing is like, well, am I going to walk the dog around the block? Or nobody asks you about it. It's not on an intake sheet, right? It's not saying, hey, are you doing your Parmesan, your casing, whatever? How's your brain fog? Like, that's not a question that you get asked. But like, how do you even quantify it too, right? I'm just like, did I just not sleep okay? Did I wake up a little bit like, fun? And as you're aging too, right? I'm like, maybe this is just what mid-30s feels like, Totally. Like, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. Wow. So all these changes, and then you're off Kalydeco. And does that just light a fire under both of you? What was if this was a trial, then the drug wasn't in the market yet. What is that process? Can you walk us through that?
Here, because Chris McLeod had got the drug and got it submitted into Canada, right? Okay. We didn't have funding for it.
Okay.
That was the problem. So,
did you have insurance to be able to get the drug for Madi at the time? Or?
We didn't cover Kalydeco. Okay. So
because
that's where we were.
That's a biggie as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my friend came up to me. I remember her saying, when I went to pick the girls up from school, and she's like, you know what? We're going to fundraise and we're going to keep her on that drug. And I'm like, hey, do you know how much it is? Like, there is no way in hell you can keep her on the drug, right? And she's like, no, we're going to do it. She was so fired up. Like, it was inspiring, right? And I'm like, let me see, right? So I went back home and I wrote to my husband's insurance company that didn't cover the drug. And I just laid out this story of Madi's life and this drug. And so they came back and said, well, you know what, we'll cover 50%. So I'm like, okay, there's a good starting point.
That is a great start.
I went to Vertex. Vertex decided to give us a 30% rebate, right? Just 20%. So
Beth, if we could just stop right there. I think, like, I feel like every time we chat with you, we learn so much, like Jacob said. But I think that point right there, I really want to underline that, because a lot of people will just go to their Sun Life account or go to something and just say, put in the DIN number, put in the drug, and it doesn't come up. So like, oh, I guess I'm out of luck. But I think it's really important to feel empowered and use your voice and use your writing skills, and if you have you make the time to do it.
Absolutely.
Don't take that first no. It's so many times insurance company will just say, no, I'm sorry. It's like, yeah, but do you understand what we're dealing with right now? And your letters of compassion, it can make a difference. It's not a black and white situation. There's a lot of gray areas there. So thank you for mentioning that, because a lot of people don't feel like they're empowered to do that.
If I may, before you go back to the story, Beth, I think that also goes for much more than insurance. I mean, recently, there's been a couple people that feel like their clinic isn't supportive in their application for compassionate care for Trikafta, or they're not moving as quickly as they would like them to. So even in being active in your own care, I think ever since you move from sick kids and take ownership of your own care to an adult clinic, I feel that the team is as engaged at times as you push them to be.
Absolutely.
Because, and I don't think that's a fault of theirs. I think they're just responsive to how engaged and involved you want to be in your care, and how serious you want to take it. So it's on every front that if you push and if you give it, you're gonna see those results, which is quite powerful.
It was we had the same scenario with Sam. Well, with her, I think I told you that stuff about the Kalydeco, right? Yeah. So after her husband moving a job and being told that Sam's Kalydeco would be covered under his new police department, and he accepted the job, they turned her down.
Oh no.
And Sam and I have been friends since Madi was in the news years ago. She reached out, and we've kept in touch all these years. And she's so devastated, as you can imagine. And she said, I can't even deal with this. I can't fight. I just want to go into a ball, right? And it was a Sunday, and I remembered I was so upset. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I'll write a letter. Like, is it okay? I'll write a letter for you. And
you're so awesome, Beth. You're so awesome. The thing is, as a CF patient, and that's why I think, and I know there's amazing CF dads too, and I have an amazing CF dad, but there's something about the mama bear,
seriously.
that like, and I have it in me too. And that's what made me fight so hard too, because for me, I'm fighting for my life, for my son. But as CF patients, I mean, I can relate to Sam so much in that, because there's so many times you're like, I'm just trying to live, like I don't have it in me today to fight. And that's okay. I just think arming yourself with people like you, Beth, and like people like your parents or your siblings or a best friend that you can be honest with and say, listen, I don't have it in me to fight. I think what changed Sam's trajectory in that moment was being vulnerable enough and honest enough and brave enough to tell you that, listen, I can't do this right now. And having you step in is 100% what she needed. So thank you, Beth, because we just all need someone like you,
Well, thank you. But it was just so, I wrote a letter on her behalf on this, and I sent it Sunday night, and I put urgent on it. And I wrote to, and I did not write to the insurance company. I wrote to the police association, because they're the ones that get the insurance.
Totally.
Right? So I wrote to them, and before the next day was over, they had already contacted her saying that it was going to be okay. So they got her the drug, and
wow.
Just don't take no. Like I always tell my girls, what's the worst they can do? They can say no. It's such an old, adage, but it's so true.
No, it's perfect. Yeah.
So, and that's the same with our advocacy efforts too. I see a lot of people on our page. We have so many amazing advocates out there. It just blows my mind. But I understand you get discouraged. It's like, well, I went there, and they sent me this bullshit letter back, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or a letter back about a different issue, like we've seen.
Yes. Some people realize the bullshit letter. Other people don't. They're just happy they got a response. That's where we can help them decipher. But anyways, it's like, yeah, that's okay. But you just go back to them again. Like you don't accept that. That's not okay, right? They work for us.
And I think the root of fear of going back to them sometimes, Beth, is, and I've come to you with this as well, and I've said, listen, but like they said this back to me, and you're like, but it's not your job to figure out the solution. You need to explain the problem. And I think that's so empowering for everyone to know that, like, if your MP says, well, great, Vertex hasn't come to the table, or they just give you a slap in the face back, you say, that's wonderful. It's your job to figure this out. I'm telling you what the need is, and I'm telling you that we will not lose more people with CF. And that is the problem. I need you to fix this. Like, you don't need to tell an insurance company how to fix it, or an association, or an MPP or an MP. You just need to say, yeah, well, I'm a human being and I want my life to be saved, or my daughter's life is critical to me. We just have to present them the situation. But you don't have to be the experts in every field.
I think you nailed it, Steph, in the sense that, we're all human beings, right? So at times, we, as a CF Loud team, we we get asked, do you have a letter template? And I think the biggest takeaway that we've heard from many MPs and other advocates is I think people telling their own story, even if it's a little bit rougher around the edges, is a lot better than a canned template, because what we're trying to do is appeal to the humanity of that person on the other end, whether it's an insurance company, an association, in this case, politicians, to get in touch with that humanity, for that story to resonate with them, because then they become an advocate on our behalf. And it is when we bridge that gap, that is when we'll find the success that we're trying to accomplish. It's not the technicalities, it's not the PMPRB this, the CAT that.
Or the history of it.
Or the history is, hey, that MP now feels what Madi feels, what Beth feels, what Steph feels.
And how many people do you think just get stopped at, they get paralyzed with like, well, I don't really fully understand the issue. Because I remember at the beginning of this, I was having a hard time articulating the whole history of all of it, even to my mom and dad. So if I couldn't tell them, like, who am I to tell this politician? And I'm not someone that was really into politics. So I put myself in these categories, like, I don't know enough, I'm not into politics. And I gave myself these labels where none of those labels matter. The only thing that matters is I'm a human that has the right to breathe. And it's as simple as that. I don't care if my politician can say cystic fibrosis. They need to know that I can't breathe and I need to fix that. That's all. That's the only thing they need to know.
It's a huge takeaway. It's a huge takeaway.
And I said to somebody wrote yesterday about something about a template letter, and I do appreciate that sometimes even just little blurbs of the wording, right? So even if there's a here's the story about my daughter, blah blah blah, and you just put everything out there, and then you say this is how you can help. We need the PMPRB to be rescinded. End of story. There's a pathway for that MP to follow. If you can get now obviously with COVID right now, it's not going to be happening, but going forward, bringing your kids into the meeting, if you're comfortable, let them see that child that's going through. Sit there and tell them about your child's day or your day as an adult. Like, you know what I mean?
It will keep them on track too, Beth, because, good luck saying no to your kid. I don't know.
I was going to say, maybe don't do your airway clearance that morning.
Yeah,
so
maybe
you might get a little cough attack in front of said politician.
And I mean, when I had my
in and do a mask.
Yeah,
right.
Oh, sorry, it's time for my mask. Do you mind?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you have CF related diabetes, you can get some needles out, bonus,
Or just bring a little bag with your meds for the day. It's like, and
maybe going a little unstable. I mean, I remember I was going in a few days before Christmas. It was the Christmas time of year. It's like really intense. And I'd been fighting for a long time and resilience was wearing off. And during that meeting, as she was pushing back, this MP, I just started crying. And in my mind, I worked on Bay Street for 15 years and I was like, don't be the one that cries in a meeting, Stephanie. Like, don't be that woman. And I just, here they come, because that was filling up like a cartoon, like my big eyes were like, and it just started pouring down. But I mean, I wanted to kick myself for crying, but then as I left, I was like, nah, it was probably memorable for her. It was, like, she's going to remember it, because this is, I think, even when you talk about, there's times where it's okay to cry, because this is a crying subject sometimes. I like, as a group, we all try to be so positive and we all try to be warriors, but those meetings are not the time. They're not the time to put up all your walls, or the time to say, like, I'm putting it all on the table and fix this for me, Like, I know you're not a doctor, but everything you can do from your route.
With me, like, when we went in to Jim Wilson all those years ago, Madi, he partnered with us. Like, he's so good. He's so good.
Your choice of word is excellent, Beth. Sorry to interrupt. He partnered with you.
Yeah, he did partner because he cared. And when he partnered with us, he partnered with the whole CF community.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Still fighting because he understands, and he cared. And this is brutal. He said, he looked at Matt. Maybe I probably shouldn't say it. Sorry. He looked, he goes, oh my God, you're so beautiful. You were worth saving.
Aww.
And then he goes, I'm going to be in trouble again.
No.
Probably not the most political thing to say, but
I think it was just his way of saying that you've really you've connected with him in some way.
absolutely.
I mean, Maddie, if that's your beauty, I'll use it. I'm good with that. Like, let's make posters of Maddie everywhere.
It works for Austin Matthews, so definitely
Right?
something right. But no, shout out to Jim Wilson for sure, because he has been our champion all along.
It just took all my strength not to just be like, okay, Maddie, tell us more.
Yeah.
Okay, stay on track. Jim Wilson, not Austin.
I'm still thinking of her Instagram quiz yesterday. It's like, how many times has Austin Matthews kissed me or something? I guess 3. I got it wrong.
It was 4.
It was 4. I know. Okay, back on track.
Okay,
so funding, insurance, this 20%. How did you mitigate that?
Here we are. We've got 20%, and I think it worked out to like $6,800 a month. Which, you know what? Didn't have underneath
nothing, right? Like,
right? Yeah. Like
pocket change.
So
very fancy. Yeah.
I am not kidding when I said our community stepped up huge, because there were, for a time and for a very long time, we were going to 1 or 2 fundraisers every single weekend. Wow. We had anything. We had a bar, and there was all these bands that came, like somebody from.
Can you give a shout out to your community or something?
Yeah, what is your community?
Shout out your community. Okay, so if you don't mind.
Bradford, West Gwillimbury, because we went to school there, and Sir William Osler was her school, and Beaton, which is the town we're in now. They just didn't stop. Like, they were just literally like,
great.
We had, do you want to hear the best? We had these 5 little kids come up to come to our house with a check, and it was like $220 maybe. And I get goosebumps seriously right now. Oh. They had walked dogs all summer.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, and they donated the money to Madi for her medication.
Oh my
goodness.
That's
just one example. So
I literally have goosebumps.
No, truly. Like, I cried so many times telling that story, but that was just one. So there was people that would do something like that. Then we had, somebody had a gala, and, so sometimes we'd have a couple months. So, but I'm like, wow, Madi was doing fabulous. I'm like, this is like certainly not sustainable. Right?
I remember you saying those words on the news. And what year was that?
Oh, geez. That was like when? Like 2013, maybe? 2013, maybe?
Yeah.
Mad?
I think I was in college or something. But I just remember, like, obviously I was still living at home, but I remember seeing you on the news and saying those words, like, people are so generous, but this is simply not sustainable. And I don't think Madi was sitting next to you at the time, because she said, how am I supposed to tell my daughter that this is all well and good, but what does it look like a few years down the road? This will fade out.
Yeah. So that's when we decided to, and we just started doing everything. I called the ombudsman's office and put a complaint in that there was a drug that could save my daughter that wasn't available to her. Mm-hmm. And the ombudsman's office then would call, I believe they called every month to follow up with Deb Matthews to keep them on track to see what they were doing about it. Mm-hmm. And then the minister's office then had to call me every 2 weeks. They called me to tell me what was going on, which was squat, but whatever. I was in their head, right?
You made them pick up the phone. Amazing.
Yeah, they had we went to Jim Wilson and we did a petition. So we did the hard petition. So
like hand signatures?
Handwritten petition. So what I did was we did it. Jim Wilson did it up. I sent it out to like every person I knew, like emailed it. They copies. They took them everywhere. They took them to schools, to work, to everybody, and everybody sent them back to me. And I think I had like 1,200 signatures. Wow. And I took them into Jim Wilson, because then he could then present them to.
And what information did you ask from people? Was it just a signature? Was it their address? What kind of information did you gather?
I think they needed the address. So there's a form, it's a specific form, right? So he just did the wording, what we were looking for. And I believe there was addresses and signatures, right?
Right.
So we did that. And I had gone to Queen's Park. Well, Madi and I had actually our first rally. Mad, do you remember the first rally?
Was it the one with the signs?
Yes.
Look at Maddie's mortified. She's like, oh God,
My
Mom.
face was on signs, and it was so
And
embarrassing.
it was so cute, and it was worth saving. I'm booping your nose.
At the time, I was like, oh my God. I would have done it now. Now I would have been like,
Now you would have been like, do it.
thanks, yeah. But at the
Influencer.
So the first rally we went to, we actually got invited, and there was a woman from Milton who was looking for off-label coverage for brain cancer medication. And she was a mother of 2 young kids, and we knew her, and she knew that we were fighting to get Kalydeco.
Mhm.
So she said, "You guys want to come down to this rally? You can do your thing for Madi as well, right?" So
That's really nice of her. Like, my gosh.
And that was kind of like the orphan drug thing that you were mentioning, right, Beth?
so they were looking for something off-label,
That's
right?
Mhm. Okay.
And they weren't going to cover it for her, and it was very expensive. We really were kind of going to support her. I think that was our first time where we really had any press. Like, it wasn't even in our thoughts, right? So we just went down. We had our little. And there was like, it was so funny. There was like 5 people with our little signs. It was so funny. So they brought up Kim's medication. I think Jim Wilson brought up our medication. We came out and had our first scrum. And then it was like, oh, and then Jim would bring it up again. And we just made sure that every single time that he was bringing up a question, we were sitting there for them to look at. Like, yeah, we're here.
What's up? Yeah.
And it was so funny because like Kathleen Wynn and Deb Matthew would be like, "Hi, we see Madi and Beth in the house again." We're like, "Yes."
Yeah, I love that.
Still
When
here.
I was at Queen's Park, like, and we all know Maddie, you know? Like,
So
VIP entrance to question period.
yeah.
funny. And then Vertex. So we finally got them. What's his name? The last name, Fred Horn, who was the Alberta Health Minister at the time, was the leading the Pan-Canadian Alliance, which was the negotiators, right? So they came out to have a meeting with Vertex. Now, in the meantime, Chris McLeod had gotten in touch with us.
Okay.
I was lost. I really was just like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And I had made some calls, and I don't mean to diss CF Can because they've done a lot of really good stuff. But at that time, with this situation, they were not helpful. They just, the person that I spoke to said that it was too political and that they couldn't be there, right?
Right.
So, thank God for Chris McLeod, because Chris reached out and he was like a guiding light. He pretty much held our hand through a lot of this stuff, right? And when the meeting was coming with Vertex, we went there. Chris, it was so funny. Chris would be like sitting off in the corner with his like overcoat on and stuff, like to stay away from Madi, and we'd be in there and made sure the press knew we were.
To be fair, though, if people don't know Chris, like, Chris has CF as well.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Chris,
so that's why you have to always keep your distance, right?
Yeah, and Chris got Kalydeco. He was the first compassionate on Kalydeco, right? And then I believe it got submitted to Canada after Chris, and that was in 2012.
And Chris is a lawyer as well. I don't know if you mentioned that. I know a lot of people know Chris as well, but just in case.
Incredible advocate for CF patients, and has been tirelessly working across Canada. And
he has been 100%.
You might be familiar with the CF Treatment Society. He's the chair of that. So for people that maybe don't equate the Chris McLeod name,
but also
CF Treatment Society.
I feel like Chris's personality, though, is just made for this as well. Like, he's just a bit of a force. Like, if he were to convince you that the sky is purple, you'd be like, you know what? It is purple. I never realized that. Like, he's very, and I don't mean to make it sound like manipulative. No, he's just very, like, just so,
dog with a bone.
Yeah.
But I think this has been a constant with CF Warriors. And when we started CF
stubborn, right?
In our very, very early talks, Steph and I, we were trying to see how we could awaken the beasts, because we identified that there had been so many warriors and advocates that had been fighting their own battle alone, maybe a little lost, and we had seen some come together, but mostly just on their own. And then we really thought that if we can all just level up together and help each other up and raise that level of education, understanding what works, what doesn't, this conversation is amazing because it helps our whole community understand that, you know, Trikafta has lit a huge fire under everybody, but the modulator battle goes way back, right? So I think it's really important to address that. You know, we all have that fire. We can all leverage and tap into that energy. And to our earlier point of being active and engaged and pushing the envelope with every person that we speak to about this, it's in all of us. We just have to awaken it.
And we all go through the ebbs and flows of feeling well and unwell. And when you're not well, it's hard to fight it. And like where you were, Beth, you were just saying, you know, you felt very much like, well, where do I go next? And sometimes right when you're just at that pause, when you're feeling a bit paralyzed of like, I feel like I've tried everything, when another CF person that is also a nice stubborn force comes together with you, then it keeps going. It lets you have more stamina. And that's kind of the amazing thing about this group, and the goal for the group is just to give each other motivation and give each other more stamina to get to our common goal.
Absolutely. So you guys partnered up with Chris, and he guided you a little bit in the battle, and then you fought for funding.
It took us 2 years
of
consistent, and I want, if I have a message for all of those and all of you that are fighting for Trikafta right now, I know that's the golden goose, and there's nothing ever in all my years with CF, the CF community I've never seen people so fired up about anything. And people coming out of their comfort zones and doing things they probably never thought they would have done, which is what I did back in the day.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. It's so inspiring. I'm so happy that we can be part of it in any little way. But I want everyone to realize that it could be a longer fight than you think. We're like, 5 or 6 months in. So you don't take no. And the other little piece is, when we were going to Queen's Park, it was Madi and I and Chris. That was it.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there was nobody else. I think Tim Valier out east got it, I think, on Compassionate after, right?
Yeah.
So he was doing some work out there. It was pretty quiet. It was not the same because it was such a small 3 to 4% of the population at that time could get Kalydeco.
And at that time, social media wasn't as powerful either, right? Because being that we all have CF, we can't go to a conference and chat, right? So now that we have things like these Zoom calls and Facebook and all these live things, it really brings people together in a different way. You didn't have all these tools, which is crazy that you got as much done as you did.
And I don't know. I just think it was such a small part of the community too that we're actually invested in getting these.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can relate to that stuff because even when the initial news of Trikafta came out, and my mom, I think, sent me the article, I didn't even want to read it because I had heard of these modulators, but I'm like, well, it probably won't apply to me.
I know.
I'm like, so another modulator for another 1% of the population. Right?
I fully give Matt credit to lighting a giant fire for me, because I was chatting with Matt back in the summer, like late in the summer, before it was FDA released, and he was talking about it, and we were always kind of chatting about back and forth. We've had a similar journey with CF, and he said, Steph, see if your genes are applicable for this. And I said, I honestly can't. I'm going to prepare myself to do it, but I can't, because I've always been the person that asked the doctor about every modulator, and I'm never the one that qualifies. So I wasn't in the mood to have my heart broken. And he's like, Steph, send me your genes, like send me the numbers. So we were on text back and forth. I sent them to him. I just sent him an emoticon that looks like, like as I waited for the answer. And then he just sent me back a screenshot, circled the PDF. He's like, there's your genes. Yeah. And it was just, and from that minute on, I was just like, it's go time. Because you're right, a lot of gene modulators were not available to what, like 97% of the population? Beth, what is the number? Like, what is, do you know that at all? Of what percentage?
Kalydeco is only effective for 3 to 4% of the CF population.
Right. So virtually that's 3 to 4% of, 4,400 people,
Yeah.
4,300 people.
I think at the time there was like 118 people across Canada could qualify for that medication.
Wow.
So it was pretty quiet.
So getting 5 people to Queen's Park, that's actually not bad.
It's not that bad. So what broke the camel's back? Who gave in? Where did you guys break through in this battle to get funding?
Well, we just kept going and kept going. One day, what's her name? Deb Matthews, who wasn't a very nice woman. So we had Christine. It was so ironic, right? We had Christine Elliott. Rah, rah, yeah, right? Christine Elliott, rah, sis boom buying us all the way, right? How dare you not fund this medication? How dare you not see
for
it?
all the listeners at the time, Christine Elliott, correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, was the health critic of the opposition. So very, very comfortable position to be criticizing government.
Pretty easy. So she was
convenient theories for her. Yep.
She was up doing press conferences with us, saying, yes, well, you can't hide behind politics, and, no money is worth, everyone is worth whatever it costs to save their lives, and blah, blah, blah. So, and then Deb Matthews was the health minister, and she made an announcement that Kalydeco was going to be funded. So I didn't even hear it, and I had.
Oh, so okay. How did you know them?
The other thing too. So I forgot this piece. So I was also contacting Vertex, pretty much once, twice a week. So I was talking to them constantly. So I knew what was going on because I was getting so many stories from the politicians, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not listening to that. I want to hear the truth, right? So Vertex, my contact had said, I will let you know when this deal is signed, right? By this kind of talking a little bit and stuff, right? So Deb Matthews makes an announcement that the drug's funded, and I get phone calls. I hadn't heard it. We were going to do the Color Me Rad run down in Toronto. So I get phone calls while we're driving down to this run. How do you feel the drug's been funded? And I'm like, wait, what? I haven't heard any of that, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, it's been funded. It's, So I'm like, okay, I'll call you back. So we get down to the run. I call Vertex, my contact, and they're like, no, it's the deal's not done. There was.
Do you remember this, Maddie? Do you remember this?
Yeah, because didn't they interview us at the Color Me Rad right after we ran? Because we were covered in colors. So they interview us right after the run, and I was like, oh my god.
Who was interviewing you?
Was CTV?
CTV and Global.
And so they had the information that it was funded, and you guys at this point you knew it was not funded?
So I verified that it wasn't funded. So,
but there was that brief moment that you probably were like, "Oh, this is amazing," and then you're like,
you know what? I didn't even have that.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I
didn't even have that because I knew that Vertex would call me, or I felt more comfortable with that relationship than I did.
Believe it. Yeah. Okay.
So. Yeah, so then, so then they said, I called them back. I called Vertex. I called them back. I go, no, it's not a deal. There's no deal. The papers aren't signed. Until all those papers are signed and dotted, and that's not a deal. Right. So then they came and met us after the run. And like Madi said, we were covered in color and wet and humiliating to come out after that and have to we were serious and call the health minister a liar. You're covered in
sweaty and gross.
It lightens the mood a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
Madi, sorry. I just want to ask Madi, how did you remain positive throughout that whole journey of fighting for funding? Because I know a lot of us in the community, in this whole battle for Trikafta, we have our up and downs, and sometimes we think there's progress. Sometimes it's so easy to distrust the whole process.
And we're adults.
And we're adults, exactly. So as a young girl, having this roller coaster of emotions, how did you deal through that? Were you always positive? What was that like?
I tried to be positive. as much as I could. But obviously you get beaten down and you get tired. You guys know how it feels. Like you're just like, I'm done. Like, I don't know what else to do. I'd cry. I cried to my mom. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm tired. But I think keeping that tiny bit of positivity is what really got us through, and just having the support of everybody. And it was a hard time in my life because I was just coming into like my teen years. So I think
it's a tough time anyways.
Yeah, it was.
Yes, I mean, it's a tough time.
My hormones to begin with were like, woo, really testimony to that. But yeah, it was tough, but having that tiny bit of positivity, that's all you need.
Well, I remember Madi crying one time after, because what would happen was we'd go to Queen's Park and we'd literally have to drive all over Toronto to interviews. It would be in Scarborough, and then we'd be back down at City TV, and then we'd have a 6 o'clock at City back in Scarborough. And it was like, we would be so exhausted, but I never wanted to miss the opportunity to get the word out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, I'm so tired. She'd be so tired. And I remember after one of those long days of running around and, trying to be positive, she was like crying, and she's like, Mommy, I'm just so tired. And I'm like, honey, if you're too tired to do this, like, you can check out and I'll keep going, right? Like, like, nope, we can do this. I'm like, okay, because I didn't want her to have that pressure on her, right?
Yeah.
I was like, the moment of crying, and then I was like, okay, game face.
That's awesome.
I love it.
But I mean, it's amazing, going back to the theme of rallying as a community and knowing that we all go through it, to have, the extended community now, I think a little bit, I think the most united that we've ever been in this battle for access to all the modulators. I think it's really important to stick together, and in those moments where you're faltering or hope is down, to just lean on each other. And I think that's just a message for everybody that's listening. I think we're all here for each other. So, validate those feelings. It's okay to have them. And take a break if you need to. I think our health is the most important. But gather yourself, lean on whoever you need to. Sometimes it's easy to lean on a stranger and validate those feelings, because we're all feeling them too. Or your own support system.
And Jacob, I think what you just said is so powerful, because I've had a lot of conversations with video conferencing. I mean, and Jacob, at first you were a stranger to me, and we had like a 5-hour conversation. I'm like, I don't even know this dude. We chatted for 5 hours, but it was like about CF experiences and overcoming things. And I've done the same with Michael, and I've done the same with Matthew, and these relationships. I've really never understood the value of CF relationships, because obviously we've grown up in a world where we're always 6 feet apart, it's very topical, but grab a video conference call, like even on Instagram. Some people, I don't know their actual names because it's like an Instagram handle, but I've had conversations with somebody on the other side of the world about CF because they're curious of how my clinic might do things differently than their clinic. We're not giving medical advice. I would never do that, but it's just about the emotional aspect of like, when I was planning on being a mom, it's like a lot of women have said, how did you get the courage to go forward with that chapter, knowing that there are question marks, So, and that's only something you can talk about with another CF female around your same age. Like there's not a huge group of people to talk about, right? And in speaking of relationships, I can only imagine how special that made your relationship, Madi and Beth, because you had so many hours together, even if it was the hours driving in the car to Queen's Park or to CTV, because I remember coming home from Sick Kids with my mom. If the DVP was packed with traffic, it was my favorite, because I just got one-on-one time with my mom, and I'm one of 3 siblings. So that was, for me, the best day ever. Just get to sit and gab with my mom in an hour and a half car ride. So I'm sure, even as you grew up, Madi, looking back, those conversations are just so special.
I want to echo what you said, Steph, because my first time speaking to anyone with CF was you, which is profound. And it happened this year, 2020, when I was 32 years old. Yeah. And it's taken a lot of courage to go through that journey acceptance, of being ready to hear, of people that are sicker than I, or stories that, the T word, just stay away from transplant.
I was gonna say not tricafta, but
No,
transplant.
that's a good
The
T
T
word.
word.
I know T has evolved.
I tried to
Colors.
avoid one T word and get the other T word.
But it's such a process. But to all those that are listening, or if you're a family member that might be there, because mothers get there no problem, right? Like not no problem. Maybe that's unfair to say, but I feel that the CFer journey, as the person who has the disease, is peculiar in the sense that, because it's an invisible illness, or it can be, at times you try to go undercover. You're a chameleon. You just cough, or you don't really disclose. So you go through life pretending that, maybe you're not sick, and you don't allow yourself to enter into the relationships that we now mention are so powerful and so validating, with these feelings of parenthood, of the question marks, of, maybe just talking about, we've talked endlessly about being in the ward, admitted, or this or that, and the feelings that come from the whole journey as a whole. It's stuff that your partner, your spouse, your parent kind of understands. They've lived through it from a different lens, but until you talk to somebody who actually has lived it, it's not the same.
But I think that's where Madi can be so powerful too. And I know you are, Madi, representing sick kids, and now you're going to be representing, us with St. Mike's.
One of us.
One of us. But to those vulnerable age that you talked about, Madi, of being 11 years old and being like, I'm just trying to be an 11-year-old hitting puberty, but and then you're advocating, you're pushing. But I think showing young advocates, and I think there's a lot more role models in the world of young advocates now because of social media, but no one is Madi. No one is Beth, but to see someone like yourself that's going through the Great Wall of China and doing all this, and also owning CF so intensely. Like, you're not going and traveling and pretending you don't have CF. You're going and traveling and holding up signs that are like, hey, we're raising money for CF. And I obviously want to hear more about this, but I think that's so powerful for young girls right now.
Yeah.
Well, can I get Mad to talk a little bit about her? She became higher profile, and she gets people reaching out, like you, Steph, from all over the world, like teens. And talk a bit about some of those people, Madi.
Yeah, please.
Blows my mind.
I just have, I had someone from the UK the other day message me saying that they knew my whole story. They've been following for a long time, and they were really nervous to reach out. But I inspired them to make a difference in their small community. They didn't even have CF. They were just a normal person. They were just a normal person. Yeah, and I don't know. It touches my heart because it's just you can literally do anything. What I did was something I had to do, and I did it. But look at all the people that I'm, influencing, and I think, I don't know, that's something really special to me.
It's not something that everyone can do though, Madi. I hope you're giving yourself enough credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know. I hope you are, but I just want to make sure that I feel I don't know. I'm just speaking from someone in their mid-30s. I just feel like every year you have an opportunity to look back and be like, that was cool, So I just hope that every year, every birthday, and I know you're not stopping, right? So you're going to have more stories to look back at, but I really hope every birthday you're just like, yeah, we did that. It's cool, And
I also do want to say that you've not only inspired young kids and teens, you inspire adults as well. You've inspired me so much in knowing your fight and all that you do 100%. And your positivity. 100%. And it's, it's a little counterintuitive to think of a role model or an inspiration of somebody that's half your age. But that's crazy. It's absolutely powerful what you've done. It's great.
I love you guys.
We love you, Madi. So Beth, I feel like we left off on your story, but we haven't got to the part so you're like, do we have it? Do we not? Vertex says no, but the media is saying yes. So what happened?
So then, it's like so then Deb Matthews calls me, and she's like, because this all goes out on the news that I'm just.
But how is your relationship right now? Like, I want to feel the vibe on the phone call.
It's not good.
Not good. No, I didn't.
Do you wait for the third ring, fourth ring, and then pick up?
Yeah,
Or
I'm just like, oh, it's Deb.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, another little piece. We had tried to get a meeting with Deb Matthews, and she wouldn't see us. So we kept trying and trying. She didn't want to see us. So then Madi had written a letter. I wish I could find it. It was just like heartbreaking. I think she was 12 at the time, about being worthy of saving, right? And her little writing. And the son because the son's been behind this fight, say what it is. The son has been in this fight with us since back then too. Christina Blizzard was
right.
was Liz Braun, right? Anyway, so they took this letter that she wrote and put it in the paper and called out Premier Wynne to meet us, right? Because we want to meet her. You don't want to meet us? Then we'll go to the Premier. So Deb Matthews called us until 10 o'clock that night. They kept calling. Deb will meet with you. Deb will meet with you. And I'm like, no, we're not meeting with her.
Oh, I love you even more.
Hard to get.
No, we're not meeting with her. We're going to meet with the
Move aside.
Yeah, like you didn't have freaking time for us before. What the hell?
Oh, I love this.
So I said, no, we're not meeting with you. We'll meet with the Premier. So the Premier agreed to meet.
I don't want to play poker with you, Beth.
Oh, I love it.
I know.
So we didn't meet with her. We met with the Premier, and she was Deb Matthews was in the meeting.
Yeah.
She was brutal. Like the letters, like we were talking, and like one of the letters that she responded to me about Kalydeco, if you can imagine, was Kalydeco will be available to Madi if she's in the hospital. The point of the medication, number one, is to keep you out of the freaking hospital. Yeah. And number two, it was not available in the hospital. It was not available.
So it's a lie?
Misinformation. It was just bullshit, right? And I was like, are you kidding me? So when we were in the meeting with the Premier, and she was sitting there, and I go, well, you know what? Do you want to know the letter that I got? And I told her. I said, she said that we could get this medication that's, $350,000 a year, as long as she's in the hospital. What is that, right? And I go, and that's not even true. It's not even factual. So at the very least, she could have given us the courtesy of an educated response to my letter, right? Not that, right? And I remember Premier Wynne literally looking over at Deb Matthews like, what the frick? Like, did you really say that to the, like, I could see her face going, did you really say that? Yeah. So that was pretty,
but that was fantastic that she said such a BS lie that put a big crack in the foundation, didn't it?
Absolutely. It's like, what are you even saying? So, So anyways, after she announced that the drug was funded, then she called me after all the news came out that I called her out on it. And she's like, oh, Beth, like, I just want to let you know that the drug is being funded. We're doing it, blah, 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 blah. And I said, you know what? Put it in writing. And when I get a letter saying that it's going to be funded, then we're done. And
you need to write a book about this, Beth. My gosh, this is so good.
She sent out an email, all unofficial letterhead, that the drug was being funded. And I go, okay, now it's done.
Did you call Vertex to verify?
Yeah, of course I did.
Of course you did. Yeah, she gets her facts checked.
Just a minute though. So what happened was our, at the time, VP at CF Canada, all this is going down. He hadn't had anything to do with any of our fight. Like, it had been Chris and Madi and I battling through. And I get this phone call at the 9th hour saying, okay,
I see 11th hour for that one, Beth.
11th hour, you're not allowed to talk to the press over the weekend.
Oh, a gag order?
Yeah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, nope, it's in the process right now, and I don't want you talking to the press.
Oh, that makes the Get Loud movement so much more fitting, doesn't it?
You don't even know how pissed off I was.
but that's not a legal order. I don't know, like.
No, it was a phone call, and I was literally, I didn't want to do anything that would hurt the process.
Of course.
So I did listen. I didn't appreciate that because it's like, you haven't been anywhere in this. How dare you come at the last minute? And then kind of like quasi threaten me that like, if you do talk, you could put the process in jeopardy. You know what I mean?
Like it's going to be on you if it falls apart.
Yeah, right. So that was really disturbing. But, then again, it came out, it was funded, and it was the end of a very happy story. Yeah.
That's a crazy story, Beth. My gosh. Like, that's just...
One more little tiny piece that I want to interject and Jacob and I talked about this yesterday a little bit. When we were fighting, and if you there are a tazillion interviews, we always talked about the orphan drug process, and that was the name or term for the rare disease strategy back then. It was orphan drugs. We had the same battle back then that we have now. So I knew this wasn't just about Kalydeco. And when we were in this discussion, I would always say, you know what, this is not just about us. This is not just about Kalydeco. This is about a process that does not fit or serve people with rare diseases that need these orphan drugs. We need a different path. I brought it up. That is something that we are going to run into again, right? We right now have no choice but because of timing, but to fight for this portfolio deal to get these medications to our patients. Like CF can't wait, right?
And when you say portfolio deal, Beth, could you just expand on that? Because I know it's a language we've been using.
That we are pressing for includes Kalydeco, which is already in there, or can be Kalydeco and future modulators. So Trikafta. Yeah. So although Trikafta has not been yet submitted, we can still negotiate a package that includes future modulators, right?
I think it's looking at past, present, and future. And whenever you're telling a complete story to anybody, if they understand the past, present, and then the future hope, it really helps them understand the entire story. So if we can...
and that's why we have to include those future modulators so that we're never here again. Like, we don't want to be...
And it shows the longevity of the fight. It shows that, like, when people want to shut it down and say, well, Vertex hasn't applied to Health Canada, I say, of course they haven't. We've been in this battle for a decade.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a battle.
And they've only funded 2 of their 3 modulators. I mean, one could say that Orkambi is funded for use, but I mean, I think only from our research, I think only 1 person in Canada would qualify.
And 0 people from Ontario have qualified.
And 0 people from Ontario. I also want to bring up a fact that I found quite I dare say disturbing. So you guys fought for Kalydeco, and you were under the impression that Kalydeco would then be funded for all the genes that it would apply for, right? So
that just makes sense.
Which would make sense. Hey, this drug is excellent. It's been proven to give people the breath of life back, their life energy, their life force. And then you find out that, wait, it's only a specific gene and not other genes.
And we've already carved out 3% of the population, right? Or is that, like, I don't know.
G551D, I think, is like 3%, right? And I think now we go 3 to 5% Kalydeco.
So now we extended it, but that immediate funding victory was only for 1 gene, which it doesn't make sense.
And when did you find that out, Beth?
Modulator that had come out in Canada. Like, this had never been done before. So only enough to have to negotiate into that deal that it had to be covered for every single gene that it was effective for wasn't something that was even in our head.
But I mean, you would think that'd be common sense.
Well, it's like saying we're going to give community fresh water and be like, oh, no. Only every 3rd house. You know, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, this is a need.
Exactly. Absolutely. Good analogy stuff.
How they had that written into the deal, quite frankly. Like, I never went back. But, and that's, like Jacob said, is something that you learn by looking back and going forward when we get this Trikafta deal. we have to ensure that it's covered for everybody that it will be effective for.
Because I mean, if we don't dot all those I's and cross the T's, maybe it might just be all those that are double Delta 508.
Yeah, 100%.
And not only the ones that only have one Delta 508 and another mutation, right?
Yeah.
And in the news, it'd be great. Government
it looks
strike
like
after.
Yeah.
But it's to me it's been profound every time. Like, it legitimately is every time we speak to you, I learn something new, and it's so amazing to really start digging into the intricacies of this, and hope that everybody in our community could pick up on all these things, because when we are fighting, if we don't have that ammunition, and if we don't make sure to really, really hit the home run, like you said earlier in our conversation today, Beth, we might face another battle down the line, and that's really not what we want to do.
But let's encourage people to write questions. If you see this posted, write some questions. We'll keep track of it, and then it's a great opportunity for a follow-up video. It's a great opportunity for a follow-up presentation down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, to keep in our minds, like, yes, absolutely, we're going to continue fighting for Trikafta, the whole portfolio. We need to, as a community, I feel strongly we need to commit to the rare disease strategy as well. We can be heard concurrently.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you guys right now, we didn't know Trikafta was coming out 8 years ago, right? Like, we didn't know that was going to be. There could be in another 5 years a pill that is the cure, right?
Yep.
It may not be. There's a good chance it's not going to be Vertex. It will not be included in that portfolio deal, and we do not want to find ourselves back in this spot. So it's imperative. Like, CORD, the Canadian Organization for Rare Disease, has been fighting that battle for many, many years. And if there's anybody interested in getting some information on it, that is a place to go. I know that CF Canada is now touching on going forward with a rare disease strategy now that's called.
Which is great.
But I think we have to be aware of this, and we can't always be chasing the ball. We got to try and carve a path for the future as well, right? So while we're doing all what we're doing to get Trikafta to you guys, and I know we're going to do it, we should still be aware that we could get this path for future drugs and modulators or whatever is coming down the path that's going to make life better for our CF patients, right?
Hey, speaking of CORD, didn't they award you something, Madi?
Yeah, years ago.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, don't diminish it, Maddie.
Yeah, I know, like years. Oh, you're so old.
I know, Jacob. When did you get your award from CORD?
I don't have an award from
exactly, right? I don't know. Like, don't say years ago, Maddie. Big yourself up here and tell us about the award.
What was it called, Mom?
You're like,
it's up in my room right now. It's like on my shelf.
It has a whole bunch of awards, actually.
Whoa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the string is
I'm a proud mom. I'm allowed to do this. The CORD Teen Advocacy Champion, I think.
Yeah. It's really pretty. It's like glass.
Tell them about the one you got in California. That was a cool one.
Yeah, so I got awarded an award from Global Genes at a conference. So I got to fly to California, and I got that. And then the next year I got to fly there and speak, which was
awesome.
She was International Teen Advocacy Champion, I believe she got.
Yeah, that was in like 2015
or 16,
so internationally award winner, advocate, Madi Vanstone.
Next time you have to just wear some like awards around your neck or put them in the background, like whatever cabinet's behind you right now. I just want to see them stacked up. Like
they're really pretty, the nice glass ones, you know.
Oh,
yeah, they have a name on them, so I feel like extra fancy.
You are extra fancy, Maddie.
You know what, Steph? Maybe that's an idea. Start handing out awards, you know. CF Get Loud Award 2020 goes to.
This is for you. Oh, thank you so much, Madi. Thank you, Beth. I mean, I could talk to you guys all day.
Yeah,
every time I have like a notepad that has notes on it, it just, It's so refreshing. It's so full of hope. You guys are always have the most positive attitudes, and you're always just, it's not fluff. It's really great information for us all to learn.
It's amazing. Thank you for joining us today. And I really look forward to obviously continue our conversations as we always do, but for the rest of the community to continue feeding off your energy. I think you're definitely one of the sources that I turn to when I'm in those lows. And Beth, you're an excellent cheerleader, really. You're so caring, and I feel like you slowly become everybody's extended CF mom. And I personally want to thank you for that. But really, as a community and as CF Get Loud, I do want to thank you both for your continued advocacy efforts and for just leading the way for all of us.
Well, guys, thank you so much, because you've really put this community together and put them on a pathway to success. And I put that in your hands. So thank you for doing that, because you guys have given a fabulous platform to everybody to get loud. And I think you're making a huge difference. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Big shout outs to Michael and Matthew, who are not on the call today, but have just been life-changing for Jacob and myself.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again, but please put your comments, questions, anything below. The great thing about having this big group of people is that we can all answer. I don't want to put too much weight on just Beth and Madi. But if you do have questions, we're here to help answer them. We're here to do a follow-up anytime. I know you ladies are in high demand, but do you have anything to add? I think we're good for now.
Just thanks, guys.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. Stay home, stay cozy, and only dress from the waist up.
Absolutely.
Take care.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.